Hey, everybody, this is Jonah Lupton, your host of the Startup Sense podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's episode just got even more exciting. And I say that because the guy we're talking to just sold his company. The announcement came a few days ago, and I'm pretty pumped to talk about it with him. So let's welcome Ryan Harwood, the founder of PureWow and newly appointed CEO of the Gallery, to the show. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much, man. So a lot of the questions that I had kind of outlined to ask you, I kind of just threw out the window because now there's all this excitement to talk about. So thanks for making this even more fun for me. So before we talk about all this cool stuff and the acquisition and how you guys went from, kind of nothing to 15 million web visits a month on the website, talk about yourself a little bit. Give us some personal stuff.
Sure. Born and raised in Long Island in New York, a town called Hewlett. I went to school in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania. I went to the business school, the Wharton School, and played tennis my whole life. I played tennis in college. I was the captain of the Penn tennis team junior and senior year. Played professional for about a year and a half after college, just because I didn't want to hang up the rackets yet. And then went into the finance world, worked at Goldman Sachs for majority of my finance career for about 6 years. And in 2010, founded PureWow, and it's been about 6 years. And now going on to our next venture with the Gallery with our new partners, Gary Vaynerchuk and Stephen Ross.
So tell us, what is PureWow? What is your focus, and why did you decide to get into this business?
So PureWow is a digital media company, and we specialize in women's lifestyle content. We target women 25 to 49 primarily, so it's very much the upper millennial, lower Gen X generation of women. And I got into this business because I lost passion for the finance industry back in 08, 09. Some of the excitement I had in that industry just kind of died down. And when I woke up in the morning, the excitement, the fire in the belly, it just wasn't there anymore. And that didn't sit well with me because that's a big part of who I am. And I wanted that passion. So I started searching for about a while, several years, opportunistically looking for opportunities that I thought would suit me well. And media and tech was always a space that I was interested in. I had some friends in the media and tech space. I actually thought at first I would do something for men, but quickly learned that through research that women were considerably better consumers. They were dominating social media at the time back in 2010. They still do. They were much more willing to share content with their friends than their male counterparts. Men share crude jokes, sports highlights. Women, if it resonates with them, will share a lot with a lot of people. And we knew we were going to monetize off of advertising, whether that was branded content or straight traditional digital advertising. Regardless, we knew it was going to be advertising. And a lot of the budgets I was learning go majority towards women, big beauty budgets, big fashion budgets, even CPG, food recipes. They're the chief purchasing officers of their household. So quickly scratched all the other demographics, tried to find where the white space was in the female demo. Did so by holding focus groups with women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, did a bunch of research online as well, and really found out several themes that led me to this specific demographic, and hearing it over and over again allowed me to get very passionate about this space.
How did you go about building the website? Like, are you a technical guy, or did you hire someone? And then how did you guys go about creating the content in the early days?
Yeah, so everyone's different as an entrepreneur. There's no right or wrong way. I was coming out of a financial position at Goldman Sachs that I couldn't afford at the time to go to a salary of zero. So I actually, raised an angel round from some folks in the media space early on. I was fortunate enough to do that. So I had some capital at my fingertips, not a lot, but I had a little bit of capital to start. I was able to hire kind of a branding agency to help me build the website and pick the logo and the categories. My first two hires were obviously editors because I did not claim, and I still do not claim to know anything about what women want to read. I look at the data all day long. I see that, but other than that, I completely defer to our editorial team in terms of freedom and autonomy on the content side of things. So my first two hires were editors, and they were producing test content, test verticals, test voice. We always knew voice was going to be really, really important to differentiate ourselves. Our voice 6 years later, it's very much one that is fun, it's tongue-in-cheek, but it adds utility to the woman's life. It's always about adding value in some way, shape, or form. But it is a little tongue-in-cheek, and it's witty and entertaining. So finding that sweet spot in the early days was of utmost importance to really get people addicted to our great content. Nothing works if you don't have great content at the core. No matter what growth strategy or arbitrage things you try to do, nothing's going to work. You can't trick consumers into loving your content. So that was definitely mission number one, building the brand, picking the name, and hiring editors that were going to be able to produce the content we needed to.
Where did you find those editors? Did you hire them from other media companies?
Yeah, one actually came from publishing, like Random House, Penguin, like that type of publishing entity. The other one came from more of a traditional print at the publishing houses like Condé Nast Hearst type stuff. So yeah, they came from more traditional realms of creating content. Obviously, our editorial team is quite large now. It's about 30 people plus, and they come from all different walks of life. So I don't really think that – I'm not a big fan of looking on paper and saying who's going to be able to do the job. I think it's much more about the person themselves. I mean, look at me, for God's sake. I came from finance, didn't know a thing about digital or advertising, taught it all to myself just by hustling. And so I have a special place in my heart for just picking talent as opposed to picking skill set.
Awesome. Well said. Okay, now let's talk about the content, right? So, I mean, in order to build a successful online media company, you got to put out great content and you got to get people to share it. And you already kind of walked us through why women are more likely to do that than men, and I would totally agree. So how did you guys make sure you're putting out the right content? I'm sure some of it, didn't get shared as much as you would like, but what was your process, I guess, maybe from the editorial standpoint as to, which industries to focus on? Was it like, fitness or health or food, or did you guys do all of it?
We did it all from the beginning. I mean, of course, when I say all, I mean, so we held the market research in the early days. We asked them kind of to rank the categories that they had the most interest in. I have a funny story, which I'll tell you in a second about that. But essentially, we landed on fashion, beauty, health and wellness, entertainment, food and recipes, home decor, travel, consumer technology, books. So yes, very, very much our brand equity was always in women's lifestyle overall. Now, of course, the big four are fashion, beauty, home, and food. They tend to really get the most interest because they're just categories that a lot of women are interested in. But that being said, one of the funny stories from the early days is, they said wine was a category they were interested in, and consumer technology was not. When Apple launches a new iPhone or Pinterest comes out, blah, blah, blah. And that's what they said, but the data said something entirely different. Like 6 months later after we started publishing and we launched, all the wine articles did terrible, and every tech article that we tested just to make sure was doing incredibly well. So it's funny. Sometimes you don't always get the right answer. People don't always know what they want. They say one thing, they mean another. So a lot of times you do need to look at the data and not just trust the research. But yeah, it's been a process. It's evolved over time. We're launching a weddings vertical in a couple months. So we continue to go into other areas based on what we're seeing the passion points of our consumers.
So what has growth been like over the last 5 years for you guys? I mean, I'm sure it started off slow in the beginning and then it started to, accelerate. But what were you guys doing to help that growth accelerate?
Yeah, so it's fascinating. My investors had a policy in the early days that, no dollars, no marketing dollars. You had to organically grow. So
really? Why?
That's
interesting.
It is interesting. It's an old school way of thinking. I think it was a blessing and a curse at the same time. Blessing because it made us really, really create great content and create a voice that people shared because they actually wanted to share it, versus kind of some of the growth hacks that people do these days. So I think it definitely was a blessing, but it also, a little bit of frustration because the first 3 years were without question an insane grind. Every user mattered. I still remember actually the first real pop we got. It's so funny how these things stick out in your head, but the first real pop we got was in November of 2010. It was Black Friday, and it was about to leave for Thanksgiving, and everyone had left the office, and we were going on the press. I had one of my editors going on to a show on CBS. And she went and she spoke about PureWow, and we had a real strong call to action at the end, and it was just boom, an influx of traffic, an influx of email subscribers. I think we got like 60,000 email subscribers that day, and it was funny because that was a big moment. It gave us confidence to then go out and form some biz dev partnerships and some audience development partnerships to kind of swap and increase audience in a very entrepreneurial way without dollars, but it gave us a base to work off of. So sometimes you got to make your own luck, and the first month when things weren't going so great in terms of growth, I needed to figure out a growth hack, and that was without money. And my way was, I found a connection to a producer on the show and just kind of orchestrated this, and I made my own luck.
And I'm sure it wasn't easy from that point forward, but at least you guys had a nice base or foundation to grow from. This is Jonah Lupton, founder of the Lupton Group and host of the Startup Sense podcast. Are you struggling to find the right tech team to build your company's website or mobile app? Maybe you've developed a product but need help with your go-to-market strategy, including branding and marketing. Well, stop worrying, because my team at the Lupton Group can assist you with all of those needs. We specialize in helping entrepreneurs and startups of all sizes launch and grow their businesses. For a free consultation, you can email me at jonahlupton@gmail.com or visit our website at luptongroup.co. So when did you guys start hitting the big numbers in terms of, monthly viewers or monthly engagement? And by that, I mean kind of, 7 figures, per month. So 1 million visitors a month. When did you guys start hitting those numbers?
Probably like early 2013 sounds about right. Email was a big part of our strategy in the early days. So we were trying to garner email subscribers, and it still is a big part of our strategy. But so, I think we hit about 1 million around that early 2013 part, and same with the website. Web visitors was about that in 2013. So started hitting 7 figures around then.
And then to go from 1 million to 15 million is incredible. What do you think was, what can you attribute that to? Is that just more content, better engagement, partnerships, PR? I mean, you name it.
All of the above. I've learned that all tides rise together. There's no one individual thing that makes you pop. So we did bring in a new layer of senior management, one being our editor-in-chief, who helped take the content to definitely a different level, especially from a visual perspective. She was our creative director as well. Her name's Mary Kate McGrath, and she's fabulous. So the content improved. From a quality perspective, the content increased from a quantity perspective, and our marketing expertise slowly but surely got better and better on social, on email, on video. PR got a little stronger because we started making more money and people took interest. So, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's all of the above, but none of them on its own would have done it. We could have increased output, but if it wasn't quality output, it wouldn't have mattered. We've done that in the past where we're like, let's just amp up to 30 articles instead of 20 articles per day. Unless it's all quality, you actually will see a dip. You'll see a dip backwards from the 20 unless they're all 30 or quality. So it's always quality over quantity, but both of them together is what's really powerful.
What does mobile mean to you? How important is mobile to the company right now?
It means everything. It is, we see 73% of our traffic come from mobile right now, and that number just increases monthly. So, the mobile phone is it is the current way. Everyone's on their phone constantly, and it's incredibly important and will be eventually the entire business. But for now, it's about a 70-30 split.
And why do you think it's so heavily mobile now? Is most of that because people are consuming email and social on their phone, so they're being directed to the website via those two sources?
Absolutely. I think it's email. I think it's social. I think it's Google with search. I just think that unless you're sitting at your desktop at work and you're trying to kill time, it's just rare that people sit at the desktop all day long and peruse content. And now they're always on the run, or they're in bed and just looking at their phone, or they're online, like waiting online for something and looking at their phone. So there's just so much more attention on the phone these days than there is on desktop.
So when did you guys start monetizing the website, and then how hard is it to monetize mobile?
So we started monetizing from day one, which was really, really very unique to us. Most websites, especially content sites, don't focus on making money from day one. This was because I came from finance. To me, it never made any sense whatsoever to build a business without knowing how you were going to make money or figuring out how to make money. So from literally day one, I sold a launch sponsor in before we had one user. So that was a big moment for me to have the confidence.
How much did you get? Just out of curiosity, are you able to tell us how much you got for that launch sponsor? Because that's definitely something I haven't heard about in a while.
Yeah, I can tell you. I won't tell you who it is, but I will tell you because it was a national advertiser. But it was $100,000, so it was a real sponsorship.
Holy crap!
Yeah, and it gave me the incredible confidence to go that I knew I can go sell this, and I'd be able to hire a sales team and train them and blah blah blah. So it was a big moment for us. It also gave us some more money in the bank that I didn't have to go fundraise for to just create more content. So it was exciting, and essentially, we weren't doing advertising online great at that point. We were hacking it together with banner ads and some sponsored articles and stuff. But what we did learn fairly quickly was that storytelling on behalf of advertisers and branded content was something that we felt performed better, that worked much better from a performance perspective, and as well as just it was a win-win for all. Consumers liked it better, our advertisers liked it better, we liked doing it better. It just all made sense to us, as opposed to kind of monetizing solely off of display and banner ads and pre-roll ads on video, which is not what we really love, to be honest. We don't think that those forms of advertising are very effective on their own. We think they're effective when they are paired with storytelling and branded content. So about 2012, we had an advertiser. It was Hyatt. Hyatt came to us and said, we have these new amenities that are geared towards women specifically. How can we subtly integrate those amenities into your travel content? And our editors looked at the business people and the salespeople and said, you can't tell this story in a banner ad. We need to create like a long-form piece of content that integrates their amenities into it. And we did it. It performed incredibly well. We produced a lot of content for them. And from that point forward, in 2012, we kind of threw our hat in the ring full force into the branded content space, which then got called native. It was before native was a word. And native advertising then became about, and fortunately we had the winds behind our sail to kind of, as the tide was turning towards this and more dollars flowed towards this, we were able to take advantage.
Totally agree. I think the storytelling perspective and branded advertising is just more genuine to the reader, to the audience. They don't feel like it's being forced down their throats.
Yes, I mean, we pretty much exclusively work with Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies because of the type of advertising we do is just suits their mindset a bit more. So Nordstrom, Macy's, Neiman Marcus, Cartier, LVMH, Burberry, Chanel, Tiffany, P&G, Unilever, Hershey's, Mars, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo. It really spans the gamut. Proud of all of them, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, we've probably worked with over 250, 300 advertisers over time, all that are Fortune 500, 1,000 type companies.
So say I was advising a startup in the fashion space or beauty space, their products and services are really geared towards women and they were looking to access your audience. I mean, is that a conversation that you guys are willing to have? And then what kind of a budget would they be looking at in order to get involved with PureWow?
Yeah, the way we think about those things, there's kind of like four different ways you can work with us. One is editorially. So obviously, if you have a unique product that has an angle that our editors think they can write about editorially, then fantastic. Pitch it to our editors, and you don't have to pay if they think it's a great story. So that's one way. But of course, you gotta have something special there. Number two is paid advertising. Budgets range quite a bit. Typically we start flexing our muscles in the six-figure range in terms of branded content, but we can do it lower than that if they're really just looking for a couple of sponsored articles and some display advertising. We can do it lower than that, and then there's kind of what we call growth partnerships or audience development partnerships, where if you have an asset that we feel like we can benefit off of, and we have an asset that you think we can benefit you off of, we might do a barter of some sort, or like we're going to post your thing on Facebook, you're going to post our thing on Facebook. So it's a swap of some sort with that is a pretty structured thing. Usually those are publisher to publisher type partnerships, syndication partnerships, so to say, or potentially they are commerce and content, like an online retailer that is a pure digital play. Maybe they have an audience and we can do something there. So those fit in a very specific bucket. And then the fourth way is kind of the really outside the box. We call them strategic partnerships. And then the fourth way is really outside the box. It's when it's not going to be an exchange of, it's not going to be paid, it's not going to be advertising, but it's also not going to be benefiting us from a growth perspective, but maybe we feel it's a branding moment for us. So for instance, we have a partnership with JetBlue where they put all of our video content on the seat backs of their planes. That's a branding moment for us, and maybe there's some payment involved, but it's not an advertising type of revenue stream, and it's also something that we feel we get value off of. So we're not necessarily going to charge them as much as if it was just solely us doing work. So kind of what we call strategic partnerships or business development type partnerships.
Awesome. Thank you for running through those. Now let's talk about the next chapter of your company, which is this recent acquisition made by Gary Vaynerchuk and Stephen Ross. I think they're RSE Ventures, and I think now there's VaynerX. There's a lot going on there. But talk us through this. Is Gary an early investor in the company?
Gary invested in the company in our Series Seed round, which was last year. So we only raised 2 rounds of capital for PureWow. One was the angel round, one was the Series Seed round last year, and he came in the second round. So only about a year, but it definitely allowed him to get a look into the company, understand how we operate, and see how we were profitable, and make sure the management team was a very competent team that he wanted to work with. So it definitely gave him a leg up.
Okay, so he's had a relationship with you for a little time now. But when did this all start to come together? When did he approach you and say, "Hey, I'd like to buy the company"? And what inside of you, said, "Okay, maybe this is a good idea. Let's do something."
Yeah, it's actually we were at Sundance in Utah about a year ago, and we were sitting there watching a meaningless Knicks-Pistons game, and all the other guys that we were with were actually kind of like out on the town, and we were just hacking, and we started talking about the business models of some of our largest competitors out there, the BuzzFeeds, the Vices of the world, and it was very evident that they were, Vice had just acquired a couple of creative agencies, and BuzzFeed was basically an ad agency of their own. New York Times had just acquired a couple of agencies, and it was like, we kind of looked at ourselves and we're like, listen, what VaynerMedia is essentially exactly what like Vice and BuzzFeed have built under the hood. They just don't have a consumer-facing property. They don't own and operate any audience. Whereas, it's the complete opposite for PureWow. We didn't really have the full-fledged agency capabilities, but we were really good at building owned and operated audience on our website and our email, and building a voice and a loyal brand following. So that's how it started. And then slowly but surely over this whole entire year of 2016, it started to become more of a reality. I met some of his financial partners and Steve Ross, and from a philosophical perspective, I started meeting his executive team at Vayner, some of his financial partners at RSC like Steve Ross, and once they all kind of signed off that I was the person they wanted to lead this initiative for them, that's when it started to keep going.
So what is going to be the new structure of PureWow? Are you going to stay on as CEO? And I know I mentioned in the introduction this new entity called the Gallery. What is that going to be? And then who's going to be running that?
Yes. So essentially I'm going to be the CEO of the Gallery and PureWow. We have a parent company called VaynerX. So underneath VaynerX is going to be Vayner Media, the agency, and then on the other side is a company called the Gallery, and PureWow will be the cornerstone property of the Gallery. And the Gallery is going to be a portfolio of media companies that truly matter to the end consumer. We're going to build brands that have a specific voice and a real mission statement that stand for something and that have a specific look and feel and design that are going to really matter to the end consumer. So that is the Gallery, and I'm going to be the CEO of the Gallery as well as PureWow, while Gary is the CEO of VaynerX and Vayner Media.
So everything you've learned and your team has learned from scaling up PureWow, you guys are now going to take that and implement that into other niches or markets. And what would some of those, be? Was it men's, millennials?
Yeah, we don't know yet, but we are going to, similarly to the way I started PureWow, where we're going to reverse engineer the white space like I did in PureWow for the female space. We're going to do the same for demographics and different categories and verticals in other spaces. So time will tell where we're going to be opportunistic. I mean, obviously, men's is always one that comes up first because it's obvious. But if we can't find a space that we think we can own in men's, then we might go into a different vertical first. So time will tell. But yes, that is the exact theory. The thesis here is that we have certain core competencies at PureWow that we can replicate over time, whether we're building publishing assets from scratch or whether we're going to acquire new ones. Both are on the table. So, but yes, our team has those capabilities to scale that.
And I'm guessing that many of the brands and Fortune 500 companies that you currently work with at PureWow would also be interested in being partners with you on some of these new ventures, correct?
Absolutely.
What have you learned over the last year that's made you a better CEO today?
Patience is important. Don't get too high, don't get too low, remain even keeled. I've learned this over the past 6 years, but there are no shortcuts. Everything, you got to work really, really freaking hard if you want to see success. And that's okay, right? You wake up every morning, no matter what's going on, and come to work to kick some ass. It doesn't mean that you don't go. You go. You don't wait for things to come to you, but it means that grit. I think grit is the best word. Grit to me means you have a steadfast commitment to your goal long term. Even though that it takes a long time to realize that goal, you need to have that grit day in, day out. So doesn't mean patience, like don't go after it. Yes, go get it. Every single day, go get it, go after it, hustle. But you have to have patience because none of it's going to happen overnight.
So I think any entrepreneur is willing to take risks. Some take bigger risks than others. But, what were some of the risks that you took with PureWow? I mean, obviously leaving a 6-figure job at Goldman Sachs was probably the start of it. But, since after you started the company, like what were some of the risks that you took while trying to grow this business that either worked or didn't work?
Yeah, back in late 12, like I said, we were very email focused. Our angel investors were the same investors that started Daily Candy and Thrillist and a bunch of other kind of email publications. So that was the business model in the beginning, and we had to make a conscious effort to pivot from that business model. And while email was still a huge focus, we pretty much entirely pivoted to putting a lot of our resources towards building out the website and social, which was a risk because it was expensive, it was costly, much more costly than the overhead of an email-first business. It meant we had to kind of change processes quite a bit, increase output of content quite a bit, which obviously shook up the editorial team quite a bit because we were asking a lot more of them at that point. So that was probably one of the biggest risks because I kind of did it. I just did it. I didn't really ask a ton of people for approval. I just kind of knew that was it was survival of the fittest, and I just knew that we had to do it if we were going to become a much bigger company. I really felt that there was a cap in terms of revenue you can make as an email first business. So yeah, that was definitely probably one of the largest risks I took.
And was there a day that you rolled out of bed and you're like, oh crap, what did I do? This was a mistake.
No, there really wasn't. I think at all times I probably had irrational confidence in what I was doing. I'm pretty analytical. I don't make a decision without kind of thinking of the consequences. So once I make a decision, I'm pretty much all in, and I go all in and aggressively. And I never kind of looked back. I think it was the right decision for sure in hindsight, and fortunately it worked out.
Since some of your investors or a lot of your investors have been involved in similar type businesses, right, in the online media space, what's some of the best advice that they've given you, over the past couple of years?
Having the brand be bigger than the business is always having the business be bigger than the brand. Is something that always stood out in my mind. I always found that fascinating because until I came into this world, I never really thought that was true. I thought, business trumps all. If you're making money and you're profitable, then that matters most. But one of my investors told me early on that having a brand that's bigger than the business is better, actually, because at the end of the day, perception is reality, and you will be able to garner more than you can handle, and more inbound and opportunities will come your way if the brand is bigger than the business.
Gotcha. Makes total sense. So I'm guessing you're a pretty analytical guy. I mean, anyone that spends time at Goldman Sachs, has to know their numbers and their analytics, and they probably love data. So what are some of those numbers that you look at on a daily or weekly basis, to determine the kind of the health and the growth of the company?
Yeah, all of it. But I mean, the high-level KPIs of the business, of course, I look at top-line revenue. I look at our expenses and burn rate month to month, so I can see what, EBITDA is trending towards and just cash flow in general. I look at audience growth across all our platforms, the website, email, the social channels, video views. I look at engagement in all those platforms. Those are just some of the kind of KPIs of the business that we look at in order to see if we're doing what we need to do.
And a couple last questions, then I'll get you out of here. Why did you decide to sell the company? And, how did you don't have to tell us the financials or the numbers or any of that, but what made you feel comfortable that the purchase price or the deal was the right deal for you at this time?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. No one's asked me that yet. We had again, analytical. I kind of looked at the options, the three different options we had in front of us in order to make a decision. The first option was slow and steady wins the race. I've raised minimal capital up to this point compared to my competitors. Continue down that path. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked at my employees in the mirror, in their eyes, and it just really, we were too ambitious for that at this stage of the game. We really wanted to move faster, go bigger, and really be on a stage to compete with the biggest companies in our space. So I scratched that. Number two was go raise a big round of capital and go try to build this on my own without a partner. While that was a very, very feasible avenue and something I considered, it would have taken me 2, 3, 4 years to build what I'm getting access to overnight with the partnership with Vayner. So I think it's a precarious time in the industry for smaller to mid-sized publishers, and that you need some resources and expertise, especially with off-platform, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, etc. And that's something that they very much brought to the table, that social expertise and deep relationships with those platforms. So I felt that raising the capital and doing it on our own might have taken a little bit too long, and it also was going to dilute me quite a bit, which was something that is always something you have to take into the equation when you're looking at raising capital. Plus, I've looked at a bunch of our competitors and peers that have gone that route, and I don't think it's turned out so great for them, frankly. Their culture has changed. They were pressured by some of the VCs to do things that they maybe weren't naturally planning on doing because they had to grow very fast. Ultimately, when you have to take a short-term view a lot of times when you're in that position. You're always looking at your next valuation, what's your next meal going to be, where is it going to come from, as opposed to taking a long-term view, which was the third avenue, which was an acquisition or some type of merger. And that was a very difficult choice, too, because most of the time those don't turn out so great because of different cultures, different situations. And I did have a lot of people sniffing around, old traditional media companies, publishing houses, the usual suspects you would think would buy a company like us, and the visions were not aligned. So I wasn't planning on going this route until I did find Gary, and I found this partner that felt really, really great. I trust him. I look up to him. I think that he's a fantastic entrepreneur. He offered me the opportunity to remain autonomous and have freedom in running a new business that was going to be larger with the resources to go after it. My whole team was going to remain intact versus like looking for redundancies and cost efficiencies, which some of the other people probably would have done if they bought us. So it just really was a win-win for everybody. It was a win for the investors. They made money. It was a win for me and my team. We made money, and we have a bright future ahead of us. And it was a win for the Vayner team because they got an asset they really needed and a team they really needed. So that was some of the rationale that went into it. And I'm feel very fortunate to have found a partner like that because it doesn't always work out that way.
Awesome. Yeah, it does sound like a really great fit. So I'm excited for you. I'm excited for your team. Sounds like you guys are doing a lot of great things. And obviously, Gary noticed that and came in with an offer, and hopefully it works out for everyone. Do you have a favorite blog or book you would like to recommend to people?
Gary's books actually are pretty awesome. Crush It, Jab, 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 Right Hook. I think he spits a lot of knowledge and spews a lot of wisdom. So that's definitely something that I think is great.
Awesome. And what's the best place for people to find you? Is it online, social media, email?
Definitely social media. Follow me on Instagram. It's Ryan Harwood 27. Also on Twitter. And then email is ryan@purewow.com.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time today. I'm glad we had a chance to talk so quickly after this acquisition was announced. Super excited for you and your team, and feel free to come back anytime and give us some updates.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jonah.
You're welcome. Talk to you soon, man.